Okay. Yes, Ms.
Yeah.
Doris?
Yeah, I'm sorry. So I'm apologizing ahead of time. That I need to take a second off of Ms. Amani's presentation to bring up a subject that the community has been struggling with in the last week. And there's been a lot of concerns around the subject. And while we have everybody here tonight, I'd like to discuss that subject so all participants will understand where we are in this process as we're talking about the housing bill that did not get passed. I believe the vote ended up being 7-7 and went back to committee because we did have people who did not vote. But we had people who voted against the bill, and it has become a concern of the community as we struggle with vacant housing to understand what went wrong in the process, why people rejected us in terms of the housing bill, because the vacancies are in communities of color. I know that Brian Knight had a lot of concern around the issue. I know that many other people struggle to understand what was going on. So based on that, there are some questions on the table that people can answer for us. If Councilman Ramos is here, or someone from her office is here.
I'm here.
We would like to have the question around, do you have any idea what was the motivator for people not passing the legislation or the bill or the resolution that was on the table? So can you tell us why the rejection from the 7 people? Do you have any idea what they were thinking about that you can share with us?
I mean, I can just speak for myself.
Please.
The bill was only going to be able to cover, let me get somewhere where there's no echo, sorry. The bill was only going to be able to make a difference for 350 properties, and that's it. It was only for city-owned properties. The biggest problem with our vacancy issue is that it is mostly the private owners that are the problem, and we need a comprehensive approach for that. The bill also said that people who were interested in these properties would have to come up with the financing themselves. And many of these properties, as you know, are so dilapidated. Oh wait, I'm outside so I can take my mask off. So dilapidated that the cost for rehab would be way more than what the house ends up being worth. And so the person would be underwater. What we need is a comprehensive approach to vacant properties. I've written a very long letter to the mayor, and I'll be happy to share it with you based on all of the work that I've done over the past many years on this issue, so that we have a comprehensive way of addressing the privately owned properties through a new process called in-rim for tax sale foreclosure for vacants only, and really invest the money in the areas that need it most. I just didn't feel that this bill was going to address all of the issues that needed to be addressed, and we need a comprehensive approach. So that's why I voted no. I believe the council president is going to keep trying to address the issues that we might have, and it may come back. But I'm happy to share with you, Ms. Doris, the letter that I wrote to the mayor and the legislation I'll be introducing soon to really address these, all of the vacant properties that we have, and work to raise the money to make sure that we're paying attention to the areas that need the help the most.
So Councilwoman Ramos, what do we mean with the statement underwater? Is that relevant to how many dollars in and then accountability for the dollars out?
That's a great question. What that means is that if a house is rehabbed, let's say we buy it for $1, it takes, in some areas, the properties are so dilapidated, it would take $300,000 to rehab, to make it habitable. And the market hasn't caught up there yet, so it's only going to be worth $150,000. Then that person owes more on the property than it's worth. And that's what we mean by underwater.
So I noticed that developers in our area will come in and develop properties, and they appear to be underwater. So I'm wondering if that statement underwater is just for some communities and not being painted with a broad brush as we look at the black butterfly versus the white L.
I'd have to see exactly what the developers are doing and if they received any subsidy, because what we really need on some of this is to be able to have that subsidy. The grant program bill has not been voted on yet, but it would have, provided $25,000 really to anybody who applies, but the council president was interested in having that be part of a subsidy to help with this issue. But it is, so I'd have to figure out, I'd have to, understand a little bit more about what these developers in the area are dealing with. Keep in mind that all of the city-owned properties that we're talking about here are all scattered site. And so we really need a block by block approach where we have someone buying the city-owned property, where we have the privately owned vacants that are then foreclosed upon because they have high liens and put into good use. So that's the kind of approach that I talk about in my paper to the mayor, and also that I think will work. So I know that folks might be frustrated, but I want to work with you on some of the things that we're going to be putting in so that the vacant houses haven't, for many years, many of them that have a vacant building notice haven't gotten multiple citations. And so I'm putting in a bill to make sure that that happens, because that will start the process of getting these privately owned vacants through the court system and into the hands of the city, so that then we're able to have a block by block approach.
Thank you for that detailed explanation. I respect your comments around this subject. I'd like to ask, if there are 350 properties were owned, would it have been okay to address the 350 that were available with funding? Because that would have been 350 less, because we're saying they belong to the city. Is that correct, or am I misunderstanding that?
The Department of Housing and Community Development had said that the way that the bill describes where they want the program to be would only apply to 350 houses. And so I don't think they ever submitted a map of where they are, but they're all over the place. And so what we do want to have is an approach where the original Dollar House program was focused on 2 areas that had a lot of city-owned properties clustered together. They also did infrastructure, lighting, streets, all of that. So if we're trying to copy that program, that wasn't this bill. So, but I'm totally committed to this issue of vacant properties, Ms. Doris and everybody else. I've been working on this issue for a long time prior to my being a council person. I'm happy to share with you the letter that I sent to the mayor, who then integrated a lot of my suggestions into his recent announcement about the 30-day review. Because it's critical we get to the bottom of it, and it's unfortunate, and we've really had a lot of development in areas that don't need it most. We need to put that investment with all of you and giving you all the opportunity and all of us the opportunity to be a part of the solution. And so we need a comprehensive approach.
I guess one of the things I'm hearing from people who had concerns is that if the vacancies are there, what was the main problem? And I heard you explaining their scattered sites. So I'm better understanding that. And I'm hearing you say that the private properties were a major issue. So if this happens in a different format for you, are you saying to us that you would vote positive on this bill? Or is that still going to be an issue when it comes to the money? Because I heard you talk about whether or not these people were going to be underwater. So if it looks like they're still underwater, how will we settle that? Is that something you can vote on if they change the model that currently exists? Or would you still be shy on voting positive because you would still see that underwater kind of outcome for them?
I'd have to see how, if any amendments get added on to it, that would address the concern. But I haven't talked with the council president about it yet.
Okay. And I'm just saying that because all of us on this call are suffering from the vacants, and we just can't wrap our heads around why people are not being supportive. I better understand it now that you have explained the position that you were taking, because we're feeling like it's going to be incumbent upon communities to ask all the people who voted, all 7 who voted this down, to give us some kind of explanation as to why they were feeling uncomfortable. So I've heard yours, and I greatly appreciate your answer because it gives us more knowledge on which way to go. And I think I also heard you say that you would vote positive on this bill if it can take another turn.
No, I'd have to look at if there's any other amendments before I can make a decision about that. So I can't make a decision about that now. But I, have been working on a very comprehensive package of legislation to address vacants that I'll be introducing very soon. And again, I'm happy to share with you my letter so you see how comprehensive we're working on this, and that it is going to be a lot about the money, and we need to raise that money. So that's going to be part of it.
Well, the 640 million is here. So the expectation from communities of color is that we're not redlined anymore, then that we're not discriminated against, and those we have elected will be a voice for us and to help change what's happening in our communities, because we struggle with the vacants. And of course, with the continuous vacants, property value for us is on the low end. So all we're asking from you is that you give your best at helping us to turn this around. So if you will share your plan with us, that would mean a lot. I don't know, Miss Kathy, if there's anybody else that have any questions.
Mr. Wanda was trying to get in.
Yeah, so, and maybe you guys, I babble on, I might be a little immature or delusional about this. So my confusion comes at a few places. So, Miss Doris, how long have you been a community leader?
Quite a while.
Some years. Okay. And
Some
I know
years,
that.
and I understand the redlining process, and I understand the failure of banks to loan money in communities of color. And we hear the same thing. It means that, because see, when you say to me underwater, that means we're not ready. That means consistently we're not ready. And the not ready is not what we want to hear. We want people to help change the suffering that's on the table for us. And if that's not going to happen, it's not good for us. So
No,
we're
and
begging
I hear what you're saying, but that's not what this means. I mean, what we're trying to do is make sure that we've got to raise a lot of money to invest in the areas that need it most, with all of you included in the process. And to have that massive subsidy available is going to be extremely important. It's not about whether somebody is ready or not. It's a math game, and we don't want anybody in a situation where they're going to be in deeper trouble than when they started.
Well, the trouble might be better than we have young women paying $1,300, $1,500, $1,800, and $2,300 a month in rent. That's a tragedy. And for us, somebody has to help us. So we're asking you to assist us because you are one of our representatives. So we're begging you to put on your best hat and give us guidance on how to turn this around. We can't continue to live with the decision making that always says to us, we're not ready. They're not ready. And that's what it means. And it's not about you personally. It's about the continuous racism, race-based decisions that are made in Baltimore City that will not change what's happening in our communities. And
Right.
we have excuse after excuse after excuse. And we're begging people to look differently at what you're doing.
Yeah, I hear what you're saying, and I'll be happy to share my paper and come and meet with you and anybody else. Because I know we wanted to do something else in this meeting, but I would love to
Yes.
have that conversation. So thank you, Ms. Doris, for bringing it up, and I will do that.
And I'm glad you were willing to be on board with me asking you the questions. So I'm sorry I took that time from your meeting, but that question has been out there and that pain has been out there for us for a while.
So, Ms. Doris, for the community association, and I heard that, and everything that we talk about is important. But what we have to realize as a community association, these are the things that hold precedence over whatever we were going to talk about when something like this takes place. I think that shifting the narrative or the topic is necessary because it's something that we should really speak on. I asked you how long were you a community leader for a reason. My reason is I remember Robert being in his position since I was in my early 20s, and he's been dealing with community associations since then, meaning that community associations has been around this long. What I'm noticing is that when we get representatives, elected officials in that I think that the jobs are to speak for the people that they represent, the communities, we have the councilmen, and tell me if I'm doing the chain correct. The councilman speaks to the senators so that when the senators take it to the floor, they speak on behalf of the councilman, but the councilman speaks on behalf of the people. Am I correct in that chain, Ms. Doris?
I believe you're right. That's what they're supposed
Okay.
to take it. They're supposed to listen to the people.
Okay, so then if you have community associations, what is the point of a community association? If we're saying Miss Pauline is a great example, it's a woman that comes to her meeting every month who speaks about, I've lived in my home for the last 30, 40 years, and there's a vacant or a house caught on fire, or something is falling apart next to her that's rat infested to the point that she's retired, she's living there, and she has to move because nothing's been done about that. These are our communities. So my question is that we don't have the time or the wherewith or the finances to sit and wait on bills or questions or papers. These vacants have been here forever. So why isn't it that the community association leaders, even if you take on one or two, it doesn't have to be all of us in numbers, but the community leaders show up at these meetings to vote? Why is it that someone else is voting or creating papers or creating this is what it should look like or shouldn't look like, where this is affecting the people who live on that block? So if you don't live on that block, or this isn't your intimate issue, it's not going to hit you. Even though we're compassionate, we're going to have empathy and not sympathy. And empathy helps you think things through in a different manner. Sympathy is you're a part of that issue, so it helps you deal with the intimate need. I think that we do it incorrectly when our officials speak on our behalf, like, so for example, and I'm saying this because I'm listening to you guys, Councilwoman Odette was able to say, I spoke on it and I voted on the bill and this is my thought. But, and I could be wrong, Councilwoman Odette, I don't remember any of us saying, like Miss Pauline and so on and so forth, I was at that planning meeting to see what are we gonna take to the floor. And that's disturbing for me, that I think that the community, the people who live on these blocks, because it is a lot of them, that they have a voice in what should happen on their block. If we keep waiting, the vacants will keep piling up and sitting there, and we're gonna run out of just finances, just as a human being who gets up and goes to work every day as a resident. We're going to lose anyway, because we're going to be forced out of our homes before any of these issues can be addressed. So it's an intimate need, and it's something that we have to consistently talk about until it gets fixed. And I hope I made sense. You guys go ahead.
Hey, real quick, this is Councilman Stokes. I want to tell you why I voted for it. One is, there was a story out on Channel 13 that says, in the last decade, in the Black community, home ownership had last decade had declined. Those houses up on North Avenue, and I'm gonna use this statement that Congressman Nfume said, which I found disturbing. He said, I was a councilman 43 years ago, and some of the houses were vacant, are still vacant. Okay, that's only in poor Black communities. All I'm saying is, when we did the Dollar House program, the money, you see the story, the developers and the people living in the community, that should have been championed with CDCs, because they know their community. They will have access to city-owned property. They know that process, and they can hire their own developers to develop their community. Anytime we now say we got all these vacant houses in the city because 3 firemen fell through the house, right? But if that did not happen, we would not even be having this conversation talking about the vacancy in the Black community. Anytime the Channel 13 say that in the last decade, home ownership has declined. Underwater to me is the same as when we give money to outside developers, out of town developers. Developers don't look like me, developers look like me. When they walk away from their development because they can't finish, that's underwater. They go back to the city, get more grant money, and get some more property and develop that. That's underwater. So the underwater to me is an excuse, because every time I go in my district and I see 1,900 properties, and people are going to say now, oh, we can't get the funding. You know why we can't get the funding? Because they redline us at the banks too. So now what do poor Black neighborhoods supposed to do? Wait for somebody say, oh, we're going to sell you the house, but you say it's underwater. But when the developers come in and say it and develop it, and they spend $250, guess what? The same people that live there, that went through all that mess, that dealt with all that violence, that live next door to them vacant houses, guess what? They got to move. So underwater to me, how did that apply? It don't apply to my part of my neighborhood, because when I go to Chester Street, North Avenue, and all them people that live around there on North Avenue, all them people live in South Clifton Park, all them people in Darley Park. I was just walking down Darley Avenue the other day. It got to be 20 damn vacant houses in that block. Why?
Or more.
Why? It's systemic racism that they take the money and put it in the most influential neighborhoods. So now it's a big issue about underwater. To me, anytime Kwesi say it house been vacant for 43 years and it's still there, and y'all telling me about some damn underwater, it's underwater when we can't get the loans. It's underwater when CDCs, I got 2 Black ladies on this phone, on this call now, got their own CDCs. When they did the Dollar House program, those properties owned by the city, even if it's 350, should have went to the CDCs. They can hire their own developers like all developers do. So to say it's underwater, there's a problem, it's underwater. It ain't a problem when we have developers come from DC and New York. And I got some houses on Broadway in a 1,500 block right now that some developers supposed to been finishing. Guess what? They've been sitting there since then. They still vacant. So when you say it's underwater, it's only underwater for certain people. It's only underwater for if you go to the community, you tell them, I want to do a dollar house. Well, you can't afford it. But if the comps say it's 250, well, you identify the houses at a smaller house, not a house at 2,500 square feet, something smaller. So when you develop it, the cost is not going to be $250. If we got 350 city-owned properties, why we can't develop that to start something? Because people call me all the time. They sick of living in a block by themselves, and on each side of them, they got 5 on one side and 5 on the other side, and then we holler about, oh, it's underwater. You got to live that, experience that.
Robert, and I'm not going to dominate this meeting, but I just wanted to piggyback off of what you said. Is two different things. It's not believable for me about the financial part, because I'm with you. Every meeting I speak about, we have 2 women on our partnership that have CDCs that should have precedence, and I say this every meeting, and no one has taken it serious or taken it to the next powers that be to say, hey, these 2 ladies have that, and this is what the community wants. That's one. Another thing is, I watch Billy Joe all day, every day, redo these houses. So it's not that much money, because Leroy and Billy Joe and all of them, they refurbish these houses every time you turn around. So it's doable. But the other thing is, it's disheartening as a community leader, because I can stand in the line of fire, but I can't be a voice in that fire. On St. Clair Lane, right there across the street where we looked at, that's been homeowners forever, I'm getting calls in abundance. Hey, it's a substance abuse house on that block. How did it come there? Who opened it up? Where did it come from? Because we have anybody and their mama can go and get one of these properties on a tax lien. We don't know anything about it. We're not aware of it. Our houses were sitting vacant too long. In Federal Hill, in Canton, you don't see any substance abuse houses because they had the opportunity to buy them up themselves within their community. In our community, anything goes. These are homeowners that's been here forever. My family's been here forever. And now we got to look at a substance abuse house. And I'm telling you, because I'm licensed for substance abuse, and getting a substance abuse house is something totally different that you want on your block, dealing with all this drug addiction and alcoholism that's just sitting there in your neighborhood, and you don't have any say in it. So you go with the vacants, you go with the substance abuse houses, you go with the transitional houses, you go with the assisted living homes. All of that is in Baltimore City, in the poor African-American community in our neighborhoods. And the reason being is because we don't have a say on what happens to the properties in our community. What's the point of having CDCs? What's the point of having community leaders if we don't have first dibs on what happens in our community? But we can take all the slack. I can't tell them why that house is there. I have no way. It's nothing I can do about it. So guess what happens in the community? They don't have faith in me. They don't believe in what I'm doing. So they keep doing what they're doing because I don't have a voice. I don't mean anything, because I can't go and say, hey, these people are speaking on behalf of us. It's bullcrap, and we're not at that table. So it's just ridiculous. So it's frustrating, and I'm not going to
So
talk anymore.
I really appreciate this conversation. And I want to again emphasize that I'm happy to meet with Ms. Doris, whoever else, because this process called NREM tax sale foreclosure will help us keep control of the outcome of our properties.
Watch it here.
That's an extremely important piece that, Mr. Wanda has talked about, that we don't have control of the outcome of the property. And that's been frustrating in all of our neighborhoods. Even in Cham, which is in my district, we haven't been using the receivership tool because we can't control the outcome of the property. We need to have be able to do it, which is why we're doing this new NREM process, and make sure that everybody's involved in the conversation, and that all of this has to start in areas that need it most. You'll see in my paper that that's what we talk about. I don't talk about developing along the White L. I don't talk about even saying building from, points of, whatever. It's just that we've got to go with areas that we need it most, and we need every tool in the toolbox. So that's where I'm coming from, and I'm happy to share it. And I know we took half the meeting on this issue, which is a very important issue. And I look forward to continuing the conversation.
And real
And
quick, I'm sorry, Councilwoman.
That's all right. Go ahead. I have to leave at
No.
7:30.
No, I
So,
want to say, we have voted on bills in the city council that didn't have no funding before. So funding is not an excuse. Any bill you want to pass in the city council, we have passed it and got the funding later. Now the story is, we don't have no funding. You know how many bills in the council since I've been there, we done passed and ain't had no funding, but afterwards we found the funding? Come on.
Well, I think we have almost 2,000 vacants in the 12th. And I think Councilman Ramos, you have 300 to 400, 600 in your area. For us people, it's like in a yesterday emergency that somebody hears us. You voted and you've explained to us, and you have an answer to how you want to see change. There's 6 other people. We are willing to go and speak to the other 6 people. We're willing to go to those communities and demand that you look at us different. If you don't look at us different, we're going to have to ask people, what is the purpose of having representation that does not respect the pain in Black communities? We are suffering, and the answers that people are giving us are not wholesome enough for us to believe that there's a future. So we thank you for listening to us. And I'm sorry I dominated the meeting, but there have been too many people who are struggling.
Ms. Minor Terrell,
Something?
yeah, just real quick, because one, I just want to say amen to everything that everyone's been saying, but to give a practical example, Councilman and Council Person Ramos, of what they're talking about is the same issue we had with 3 properties on Harford Road, that we literally had to strong arm DHCD to get control of those properties. Now, those properties, they kept pushing back on us that they wanted to go to private developers. And while there are only 3 properties under our control along Harford Road, it was 3 more than what we had before had we not pushed. And we also had to fight tooth and nail to get some funding support to help bring about the transition that's going to happen with those properties. As well as Council Person, we had to go outside and bring in another nonprofit to help us with it. Those are barriers that are being put in the way that could easily be removed. And I think that's all that anyone here is talking about, that it shouldn't have to be this monumental struggle for communities who have struggled so long to help change the trajectory of their community. So to what everyone said, amen from you all's lips to God's ears. But I know firsthand how difficult it was just to get control of those properties and to get the money to do it. And it may not be, as Housing said to me under Commissioner Braverman, well, what kind of dent is that going to make? Well, it'll make enough of a dent that it gives us a start.
Right. And we need a start. We're not asking for a lot, but we need a start. And if there are 350 available, then somebody would say, we're going to do something with the 350. So thanks again. I'm sorry.
That's okay,
but,
Ms.
that's my
so-
passion.
Thank
And
you
it's
for
a
that.
continuous struggle.
No, thank you, Ms. Dart, and thank you, Mark, also for adding that context so people can understand. And I just wanted to just put an exclamation point for the people on this call that the extent of the vacants in our 6 neighborhoods alone, and I'm sorry, Mark, I don't have your numbers, but because I was just looking at the neighborhoods in 12th, but if you look at Midway, Barclay, Broadway, South Clifton Park, Darley Park, and Oliver, we've got over 2,100 vacant properties. And those are just those that have the vacant building notices on them. So we already know that not every vacant has the VBN. And of that, about 200 or so are owned by the city and the rest are privately owned. So like Ms. Doris said, if it's 350 that can be addressed with the bill, then let's see what that 350 is. Let's understand how you came to how you get that number of 350, because just in our neighborhood alone, we've got 200 city-owned properties. So a dent is a dent. It's something, it creates momentum. And definitely to our council members, this is something that we want to discuss. We don't want the discussion to end here. We need to have a deeper discussion about it, and we need to move forward. We need some action. We need to get rid of these vacant properties in our neighborhoods. So with that, I do want to talk to, I want to allow Imani and Rennie some time to get into the Inspire process that's tied to development when we're talking about being able to be a catalyst for change. So with that, Imani, I would like to turn it over to you.
Okay, good. I remembered to unmute before I started talking. That's always the biggest hurdle in me for getting started. So hello, everyone. For anyone who has not met me yet, I am Imani Jasper. I am the city planner for the Eastern District. Today is my colleague, Rennie Lawal, who is the I'll let her introduce herself. But we're here today to talk to you about broadly and quickly and on our time, the Inspire process overall, and then talk about how we got to where we are currently with the Hartford Heights and Reach Plan, and then outline the steps we're going to take moving forward. So before I get too deep into the presentation, I'll just let Rennie introduce herself.
Hi, good evening, everyone. Excuse me, I have a cold. I am Rennie Lawal. I'm a Northern District Planner, and I cover East Baltimore Midway income as it relates to the neighborhoods that are gathered here.
And I'm pretty sure I'm everyone else. So hello. So let me share my screen. Kathy, if you could give me power within the Zoom. So we
You've got the power now.
I've got the power. All right.
Okay.
So we put together a presentation. It's a combination of some materials that some of you may have seen before, but we're going to go through this rather quickly so we can get to the important information at the end that's relevant to this plan. So to confirm, everyone is seeing this slide in presentation style. You're not looking at PowerPoint. Okay, I'm seeing nods, good to go. So this is our rough agenda. We're going to go quickly through that top section about the Inspire overview and then go deeper into the Hartford Heights Reach project because that's why we're all here on today. So the Inspire plans so I adapted this from a map looking at some other schools out west, but pretend those stars aren't there because we're over here on the eastern side. So the 21st century schools refers to the plans to modernize some and surplus other schools buildings. Inspire is about everything that happens around those school buildings. Inspire stands for investing in neighborhoods and schools to promote improvement, revitalization, and excellence. You may get bonus points if you remember what that acronym stands for, because I certainly do not have it memorized, but that's broadly speaking what this process is about. 21st century schools is about the building. Inspire is looking at everything happening around the school, how students are getting there, how they're getting dropped off, how everyone is commuting in and out. So it's a plan that's supposed to improve quality of life and guide the vision of the neighborhoods. It involves a process to begin the plan, and then there's a budget item for city investments, and there's a budget item for community projects that comes through the Inspire plan. This is just general parts of what goes into the Inspire plan, but what we're going to focus more on are these sort of last two regarding the area specific recommendations and the community selected priority project. So general, this is looking at the immediate walk circles around the schools, which are what were used in the initial public outreach process, looking at things like sidewalks, crosswalks, ADA ramps, any sort of street planning, looking at all sorts of different things, cleaning up to get things ready for opening day. Across all the Inspire plans, the area specific recommendations fall into these 5 areas: investing in housing and market strengthening opportunities, creating opportunities for health and wellness, improving public safety, creating it environmentally and sustainable and clean neighborhoods, and creating connections and access. And these are examples of recommendations from some of the other plans. And these are some of examples of community-based projects that are happening in other areas. For example, the park near Dorothy L. Heights, and more landscaping around the Pimlico School. These are some more examples regarding specific art projects, murals, gateways, gardens and signage type of things. So how the process is worked, because that's done mainly through community engagement to get these community engagement and making the recommendations. It's listening, gathering information, drafting and reviewing recommendations, and then finalizing, delivering, implementing the plan. So previously in this process, we went through a lot of these steps, went through them, sort of identifying the walking routes through there, came up with 18 different strategies, 46 total recommendations in the document that Kathy sent out in advance of the meeting. These are the examples of some of them. And then we heard back from you all that it wasn't just that it's time to vote on the projects, that there needed to be broader input into who was making the recommendations, that we needed to go back and incorporate the broader community around these schools. So we decided to join in the rebooting wave and reboot the process. So we're joining Prince of Bel-Air, we're joining the Proud Family. And if you are a fan of Sex and the City, that's a reboot that's been happening too. So this is a terrible map from Code Map, just trying to get a sense of like the broader area around these plans. So this hula hoop ring here is where the two schools are. So reaching out to beyond just area and reaching out to more of East Baltimore, we're reaching out to more of Oliver and Broadway East and more of these communities to get your input into the area recommendations. To go back and look at these 18 strategies and 46 recommendations, say what needs to be added to, what needs to be tweaked, what's good, what can we keep, making sure that everyone is in consensus so that we can move forward with the plan, that everyone can be involved in nominating and then voting on the projects, which I think previously was done by voting in an online form to put input onto that, and then coming back. So the timeline, this is not the original timeline I sent out, that was aggressive, and it was meant to be to get feedback from the rest of the group, is meeting monthly. So today is the recap of the process, and we're going to walk through some more of the current recommendations. Next month to keep working through those recommendations on April 19th, May 17th, and June 21st, to keep working through those so that we can finish the rebooted community engagement process around these and move forward with finishing the plan. So aren't you glad I talk fast? Because that is the fast-paced reboot, because I wanted to leave more time for conversation and to go through the recommendations for what we have. So I'm gonna pause and start pulling up the other document if Rennie wants to chime in here with any comments she has. It's well timed to do so. Or if anyone has any questions, comments, things they want to start off with.
Well, if I can just add, I'll add something just very quickly, Imani, because you said you had something else you wanted to pull up.
I was just gonna pull up the actual recommendation document so we could like look at the specific ones, but that just read through what they currently are and get folks initial like to all of those, the 18 and the 46.
And if there's anyone who doesn't have a copy of the document, if you can drop your email in the chat, and I'll be happy to make sure you have at least the draft recommendations. But since we do have Rennie on and Miss Linda, Rennie, almost half of East Baltimore Midway is in the focus area or the footprint. I would say if you're looking at the half mile when it goes out, and then even with the quarter mile, the quarter mile, those circles, you've got a good chunk of Midway. So have you put any thought into some of the recommendations that might benefit East Baltimore Midway as we're looking at, spurring development there, interest, different projects that could be initiated in the community, both on the short term as well as long term?
No, I haven't. As I understood it, that was, I don't want to say waiting, but using this opportunity to listen to what the Midway community wanted to have included in this plan in regards to the existing recommendations, maybe other recommendations that may have not been included but are pertinent to Midway's goals for around housing and beautification and public space in their neighborhood.
I think maybe we can do it in between work sessions, both with you, myself, Miss Linda, because we're being asked by DOT about some priorities for the neighborhood, both from Will Etheridge, and then there's another team that had come and reported out and asked for some more input. And the reason why I'm a little hesitant is, I definitely want some guidance from planning as we're lifting up some of the priorities, just the benefit of your wisdom as to, are we thinking, forward thinking enough? Or, because we've got the electric charging stations, for instance, also. So if there's capital money in, on the line here that can be used, is there a way to leverage the different projects that are happening where we won't waste the capital money that's here for this project on something that could be paid for from another pot of money? So that's kind of like what I'm thinking.
So the money that we have set aside for Inspire is for like the primary walking routes and the community project. Some other money that could be available is through the capital improvement program, but that requires agencies to put forth different projects in their capital budget. So it's not like Inspire has a full separate capital budget for things that, would be a normal, let's say, DOT activity or normal DHCD activity. Our money is really the primary walking routes and the community project. So I don't think that, I don't necessarily think that there would be a missed opportunity. We would have to, I think we can definitely sit and talk about what goals and strategies Midway is thinking about, and we can brainstorm those and then talk about how that fits into like the broader picture with the impact investment area, or like what the vision is for the neighborhood and how like, an idea fits into that. I'm open to doing that. I'm not the type, I don't want to dictate to a community about, because I don't live there, what, a possible strategy would be if I don't know all the nuances. You know what I'm saying? Like I like to avoid that type of scenario. So part of this listening, the engagement process that we do is so that we can listen to what the community has to say, and then with our expertise, we can maybe refine, help advocate with other agencies to help get this done. So that is how I understand, and that's how I work through this, right?
Well, maybe we'll sit with you and the principal also, because when I look at the map that was presented back, it was created in March of 2021. I'm not seeing much in the way of the walking path to school from Midway. I see a little dip in Oliver, a little dip in Broadway East, but to really create or carve out where the walking paths are for these students in East Baltimore Midway, we need to see that on the map. And based on meetings, like you said, from the impact investment area, different work sessions that we've had since 2018, I know you have a good idea, a firm understanding of what the community's priorities are. And I think Imani mentioned it, housing beautification, but also from a public safety standpoint, because we do have a significant outdoor drug activity in East Baltimore Midway that our children have to pass through. So again, drawing from your expertise on some strategies as we try to address those issues, as the children are walking past that, we're kind of at a standstill when it comes to, okay, what else can we do? So that's all I mean when we're saying, any ideas that you may have. But I think Ms. Linda wants to say something.
Yeah, can I interject, please? You know, it's kind of hard to look at what is needed through this project when from the beginning we were not included in how that process worked and what the different things were that were what was looked at when the other areas, when it was decided what the other areas were going to do. You know what I'm saying? So when you talk about pathways to the school, you know, what area are we speaking of? What type of pathways? Because it just seems like we're kind of behind the 8 ball a little bit. So I think that we definitely need to have those discussions on where do we even start. As Kathy said, we have a lot of issues, and a lot of the different points that I saw that was put up. You know, all those things pertain to Midway. When we talk about safety, when we're talking about getting the kids walking through neighborhoods, we have, you know, I think Cliffview, I saw on the map, if I'm not mistaken, was one of the streets that the kids may walk through to get to school. And we know that looks like a war zone over there with all the vacant houses and the drug activity and the prostitution. So there's a lot of different entities when we're talking about the Midway area and you know where we should even start. Like I said, we're kind of behind the 8 ball. So it would, you know, I think that we definitely need to understand the map to get a clear understanding of what areas are we talking about, and you know, realistically, what can be done. I mean, are we talking about a project that only has a couple of dollars to invest? Then, you know, what are we hoping to acquire here?
Imani, I think, is Jaffa gonna join us tonight?
So she's not able to join us this evening, but she does plan to attend the next one. So as the Inspire planner, she might be able to go down into deeper detail on how the boundaries are drawn. We're aware that we are in this rebooted process because the community engagement and outreach the first time around did not capture enough of the community and that more time was needed to take this. So we are here and committed to hearing from the newly expanded and I guess correctly sized outreach area to hear these concerns and hear about what these projects can achieve to improve the walking experience, both for students and also to help the community and make sure that the areas around it are on the path to succeed as well. So that's what we're looking at. So I'm making a note here about going into more detail on how the boundaries are drawn.
Right.
Also trying to put together a much deeper dive into just the Inspire plans in general with someone from the Inspire group and also with 21st Century.
So I just want to touch on a point quickly that the primary walk
So that we can go deeper into those topics that might be meeting separately.
I don't know what that was. I'm sorry. Ready?
I'm sorry, my internet connection is slowing down, so I'm going to put my camera off.
Okay. Ready? I think you were saying something.
Yeah, sorry, I didn't realize that Amani was still talking. I think she froze on my end, but so I just want to comment quickly on the primary walking routes. So they are determined based on where a lot of the kids live who go to the school, and looking at maps from where the kids are. There's not a lot of kids in Midway, at least from the school year map that we have, that are going to Hartford Heights. So we try to determine the primary walking routes where there's a large concentration of students walking these paths every day to get to the school. And it just the map that we have on student data just didn't show that a lot of the kids were coming from Midway. And so I did want to touch on that. And I heard everything you said, Miss Linda, about, feeling like you're behind the 8 ball with this. And we've discussed before that, the, what I was told about Midway's participation in this was obviously not correct. And so we just are here to rectify that, and that the reason for this reboot is so that you all can get in front of the 8 ball, despite the fact that, there are already recommendations, and pardon the noise in the background, my kid is having dinner. So you can get in front of the 8 ball and but just because we have recommendations already does not mean that it cannot be added to, edited, so that they reflect the needs, wants, vision of East Baltimore Midway. And that also a planning process does not necessarily immediately take into account how much money is there to do this. A planning process says this is what has been identified as like challenges and opportunities that we want to see change in our neighborhood over the next however 3, 5, 10, 15 years. And we need to identify potential resources to make these happen. So there's no I don't think that there's a need to worry about if there is money right now immediately to do this. We can say, I'm sure, we can have a conversation about, is this a feasible recommendation based on, maybe some policies, from different agencies, but not necessarily, we can't put something in there because there's no money. The point of this is to say, this is what the neighborhood identifies as the challenge. This is the recommendation to address that challenge. And these are some potential resources that, we can advocate for, whether it be through, city funds, state funds, grant funding, private funds, whatever the case may be. And, we can help the communities advocate for the resources to make these things happen. So I don't want you to be limited, or anyone to be limited by trying to think of the money immediately when we're trying to, put forth a vision of what the neighborhood wants to look like down the line.
Well, I
Renee,
appreciate that. I'm sorry, Tawanda, I'm sorry. I appreciate your input on that. But I'm at a place in Midway that we've been promised a lot and nothing has come through.
thank you.
I've been in that setting. So I'm always asking about, is there funding available? Or are we just, are we doing another meeting to just talk about the same stuff that we've been talking about since 2018? So I'm always answering that question. It's very disheartening to me that we are still in the same spot. I just want to piggyback just a little bit when we talk about the Inspire, project, and talking about where the kids walk through school. Now, you just said that it has been identified that there are not a lot of Midway kids that walk through that area. So then, once again, where does that put Midway in this project? If it's already been determined that the kids are not walking that route to go to the school, what are we talking about then? You see what I'm saying? That's my frustration. If it's already been determined, who determined that? How was it determined? Because nobody talked to Midway or GGCA, or how was it determined that the kids are not walking that route? So if that's already on the table, we're at a disadvantage already. See what I'm saying? That's what the frustration is for me. We've been promised a lot of stuff, okay? But in the last years that I have been working in Midway, it is a struggle. And it continues to be a struggle. So that's what I respect what you have brought to the table, but I just want to make that clear that, yeah, we do have to be concerned about funding, because we've been promised and promised and promised, and every time nothing seems to come through. So, and I think it's kind of left just a little bit of a, a little bit of, anger I'm trying to be politically correct here, but it left me a little bit angry because the process is done and we were left out. So that's why I say we're behind the 8 ball, because it's already been determined a certain portion of what this project is supposed to bring to the community we don't qualify for. So that's my frustration.
So,
And I know we're
Tawanda,
here to discuss, and I know that, but that's just my frustration there.
but you hit it. And Tawanda, I'll let you go 1 second because I know Ms. Doris wanted to jump in too. But it's kind of like what Linda was saying, and what I keep bringing up in terms of leveraging the expertise of our planners, in that, okay, there's a walking path to Hartford Heights or Reach. Not many kids in Midway or Midway or Broadway East or Oliver may not go there, but we have kids who are in Midway who go to Cecil, so it is a walking path to a school. So that section of Midway that's within the Inspire footprint, does any improvements to the walking path on the way to another school within that community, is that off the table? If it is, it needs to be put on the table. If it's a walking path to a bus stop for kids who are going to high school within our communities, is there an opportunity, or what I'm saying is we want the opportunity to give recommendations regarding improvements along that pathway. I don't think that we should be restricted to, if the pathway to school is not the Hartford Heights school, that we can't do anything there. And I'm not saying that you guys are saying that. I'm just asking for us to look at, not to be so rigid in our thinking, but to be flexible. And again, leveraging the expertise of our planners and whoever else needs to come to the table on how do we make sure that improvements happen in our communities and those recommendations get put on the table as they come to mind. But go ahead.
Sorry, I just wanted to clarify that I'm understanding the point that you're making. So you're saying is, if within this area, even if students aren't walking through this path to go to Hartford Heights, if there's intersection areas where they would use parts of this area to attend other schools, that the students overall still have a safer walk, even if it's not directly to Hartford Heights.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Yes.
Okay. Sorry. I was just wanted to make sure. I was like, wait, is it expanding the boundaries? Or I understand your point better now. Thank you.
That's why we need your expertise. You're much better vocabulary than I have. So go ahead.
All right. I'm sorry, Ms. Tawanda, did you have a
You're on
I think
mute.
you're on.
Yes, thank you. Because just to piggyback off of everything, and especially what Ms. Linda said, so my frustration, almost to the point of checking out, is, again, we are on these community associations. We just had this conversation with Councilwoman Odette. What happens is, and Kathy used a great word, the table. There is no table for us. And once we understand there is no table nowhere for us to be a part of, you come to us after the fact, after everything's done. I've never heard Ms. Pauline, and I speak to her quite often, say, I was invited to all of the planning meetings for Hartford Heights. Ms. Pauline is Darley Park. She can tell you every walking path, every area, every danger, everything that's good about it, bad about it. Ms. Pauline talked about this before the project even started. We did a walk. Councilman Stokes, Kathy Christian, it was a whole team of us, did a walk that talked about the water settling when you do that walk right there through Normal Avenue. Nothing has been done. We built you guys built a beautiful new school. All of the safety boundaries haven't been looked at. We've been out there cleaning up fence area with vine growing on the fence, which is a pre-K trailer sitting at the top where anybody could watch these children, to kidnap the children. Anybody can do drugs in the alleyway. None of that has been taken care of or looked at. How do you plan and build a new school with this surrounding that's in horrible condition, unsafe and dangerous? But every time there's a conversation, the conversation for us, the community leaders, the people who live in the community, is after the fact. After the fact. Miss Linda was not at none of the planning meetings. She didn't know, she wasn't invited. Miss Pauline was at maybe 1 or 2 of the planning meetings. She wasn't invited, she didn't know. And then after the fact, It comes to us to say, hey, this is what's going on. And then we keep changing faces. This is the new face. This is the new face. So it's almost like old news, and there is no table for us. So it's frustrating. It really is. And it's almost like, what are we talking about? Because it goes on and on. It's just like, make the plan, tell us what the plan is, and hopefully we can adapt to it in our community. We don't have a voice in any of this. And sorry for my frustration, but since I've been a community leader, I noticed every table we get invited to is after the table everybody ate. So what happens is we get this beautiful steak and baked potato dinner, and it's all laid out, but we get it on a trash can lid. How appealing is that? We don't want to eat it. We don't want to be at that table. So, that's my thing.
I don't, part of what I see my job is here to hear the frustration. So I want you to tell me what you're frustrated about, because, I'm still relatively new here, but if I don't know, I can't even try to change it. So tell me what the frustration points are, so that I'm not somebody else trying to give you a steak dinner on a trash can lid, because that's not what I want my planning practice to be about. I want to have.
Frustration is we're never heard. We're always given the plan after it's been developed. We're not a part of the plan. We're never part of the plan. It's after, and then we're fighting to even get a little bit. I don't understand how school was built, but the surrounding area, the whole school in a circle, all the surrounding is dangerous. The fences are horrible. It's vine growing taller the trees. You can't even see the kids behind it. The alleyways are horrible. The lighting is bad, but children are going to the school. 5 o'clock, it gets dark. You can't do after school programs for them because it's unsafe. The walking paths are unsafe from neighborhood to neighborhood, because the whole area, even if you're saying, well, they don't go to those schools, but they walk through that area, it's still dangerous, because we know all of those areas are full of vacants, drug population, addiction, all of it. They walking through unsafe area charter anyway. So it's like, what if we put in beautiful buildings up if we're not taking care of the whole community, the whole area? There's so many barriers in its way. So it's like, I don't know. I know we were promised a particular amount of money for Darley Park and South Clifton Park. You remember, I think Amani, was that you at the meeting, said you didn't know anything about it? And that we know the fiscal year is what, July 1?
Yeah, so I did find out that the funding for the project is not tied to the fiscal year. So the funding for the community project is not going to expire. So we do know that.
So we haven't even had anything done with that. Why is that still sitting on the table? We have 100 ideas. Kathy came up with great solutions and ideas. Nothing's been done. We're still meeting and planning and talking. It's just unnecessary.
So let me ask.
Excuse me, I'm sorry, because I'm in my car. I just wanted to jump in on the point that Ms. Carter is saying, and I'm not sure if Ms. Pauline Ham is still on here, but before Brick One was removed and rebuilt at Harford Heights,
I'm here.
well, thank you, Ms. Charles Ham. I know for a fact that when Nicole Price was still with 21st Century Schools, before the school, as I said, Brick One was even touched, Ms. Charles in the community talked about the need for safe routes to school. And once the work was complete, and I, my house is on Darley Avenue, and I overlooked the back of Harford Heights, and those improvements that were asked for, correct me if I'm wrong, Ms. Pauline, still haven't been made to any of those routes, and that was before they even did any work on the school.
Right,
Yeah,
that was the meeting
right.
we all attended.
Yeah, nothing has been done to it. That's back at what Wanda's talking about, the fence area and all, it's still very
Right,
unsafe.
yeah. So, but my question is to Ms. Carter's point, is this an exercise in futility for the communities?
So Mark, let me ask Imani something,
Yeah.
because and then you can respond to that, but I definitely want to make sure we have on the table, because I know the work sessions are going to make sure that the 3 communities that were left out, that their recommendations are put on the table. In addition to South Clifton, Chum, and Darley's recommendations. I don't think we're throwing that out, correct?
Correct. You can still, yes, the community that we're not involved for are invited to put their suggestions onto the table to include in this part of the plan. Yes.
Okay, that's good. So the second thing is, and I think what we can, and I'm gonna keep bringing it up because it, like Mark said, we don't want this to be an exercise in futility, in that, we're gonna have these extra work sessions, we're gonna get some good recommendations for the other neighborhoods to make sure that we're addressing it in a more complete way. But there is the real issue of the traffic and the dangerous, not just intersection, but the roadway when it comes to North Avenue and Broadway. North Avenue when you're trying to get to Hartford Heights, Hartford Road, all of those, are within the Inspire footprint. Kids and adults, and I hope we're not just limited to, the walking path for students, but just people in general. At least it needs to be considered. Hartford Road is a very dangerous road, but DOT, so DOT and DOT planning will need to be at these work sessions, because they have initiatives that are going on that are looking at the interior roads and the larger roadways. But I've not had a meeting with all of them at the same time to address, so it's like these different silos again within the same department. And now we're having this process, so they should, and I invited them, so they should be part of this process, so that when they're looking at what our recommendations, or hearing what our recommendations are, that we have at least the questions that we have, and the what we bring up as being real issues, at least we can have that conversation and get closer to when it's going to be addressed. Because if they have a different timeline, that's fine, but what is that timeline? And if it's too far in advance, too far in the future, how do we advocate to get it a little closer to what we need? Because if you don't do it, the kids that do go to Hartford Heights from Midway, they're going to get hit by a car. Same thing on North Avenue.
Can I say something real quick? First of all, this is Councilman Stokes. I'm not gonna put that all on Imani because she just got here. But my statement is, I heard what Rennie said was she was told something different than what was going on. So when Rennie evidently came on, somebody had already set the tone in terms of Midway and stuff not moving forward. Because Kathy and Linda know it took almost 3 years to get traffic calm around Cecil Elementary School. And that's when people really became frustrated. So when Rennie spoke of, it was a different story than she was told. That's why it's where we at now. So my question is, I understand where we at now, but how do we move forward? That's the issue. We need to talk about how we move forward, and that's why we on this call. But again, I understand what everybody's saying, because Linda, though, we was fighting just because them kids around there, probably was in 2017, they finally put up the traffic calming, but we kept getting a different story every time we had our meetings with those different agencies. So I just want to share that and say, how do now we move forward and make sure some of the items that have not been addressed, we can move forward. Thanks.
I think we start by looking at what the recommendations originally were and seeing where the gaps are. And to speak to the earlier question about I'm sorry, so I didn't catch your name, but I saw your display name is Culture Homes Montebello, so I know what community you're here as a part of. I don't think any plan is an exercise in futility. As Rennie stated, it's a lot of a visioning document. What do you want this place to be? It's not a guarantee that you get that, but it's certainly easier to get it having written it down and said that that's what you want. It's harder for that to happen if you don't write it down at all. So that's what we're here as part of this process to do, is help set that vision for what can be done in the area immediately around this school, and how can we leverage that impact to areas not immediately around the school to improve these communities, to bring greater development, to impact positive change, while trying to bring folks to the table that felt that there is no table, because that is something that I want to change. So moving forward, it's adding to the recommendation, seeing what's missed. How do we, if not leverage, then at least link paths to bring things together to move forward on this plan. And I know I wasn't here for the phase 1 of this Inspire plan, but if this is phase 2, I'm definitely here for the duration. You got me. So.
That is good. So what do you want to do in preparation for the first actual work session, since this was the recap? And
So I'm sorry, how much time do we have left today?
well, it's 7:30, but those who can stay on can stay on. This is Zoom, so I'm on.
Oh, okay. Hey, all right. So we got the time. So in preparation for the next meeting, I would like us to, as a group, review the recommendations. I think we can read through them together quickly if anyone has time, if not to read through them separately, and then come to the April meeting, having either to identify something that you want to add, or something that you think needs to be amended in the recommendations as written. So if there's anything missing, that's where I want you all to, oh God, homework is the wrong word. I am not your teacher, but in terms of prep work, so that we all come on the same page, having at least read once through those recommendations, if you can't stay on for us to go through them now.
Now let me ask, okay, Brian and Blondell are still on. Okay. So the question I have, Imani, because I did go through them, and I think what we have 5 like categories.
Yeah.
And is there a way to, I guess, because we had wanted to see like dollar costs, like estimated costs for some of the recommendations that were on the table. And I know we're gonna, need help with how you're going to interpret some of the priorities that from the other 3 communities that we lift up, and kind of create recommendations from there. I don't want to say create, but interpret them and put them on the table. But, just, I want to keep in mind what Ms. Linda was talking about, and taking what you just said, there are no guarantees, but if there are certain dollar amounts where we know that it may be easier because there's a funding source, and it's not super expensive, is there a way to attach a dollar amount to some of the recommendations?
I think that might be more useful for the community projects in the area recommendations. That's my opinion as a planner, because if you're looking at area recommendations that are going to other departments over multiple budget years, that might not be a number that they even have ready. Or that's not even how they would approach the projects. So I would recommend focusing on that as we approach community projects rather than area recommendations, because if one of the recommendations is related to reducing the amount of vacant properties in the area, I don't want anyone to get caught up on the multi-million-dollar price tag that's going to come with that, because that's what it probably would cost overall versus a more short-term item that we know the cost of.
Okay, then can we then at least look at the timing to implement?
Yes, timing is always something that we try to include in plans. Yes, I agree with you on timing, but
Okay. So timing, and then the key agencies at least will know who needs to be at the table.
Agreed. Yeah.
Okay. And you're asking us as a community, as our communities, to prioritize the recommendations that are here, as well as some of the new recommendations that come on board.
Yes, so I think if it would make it easier for me to make like a condensed list of the recommendations rather than you all having to go through the whole document, I can make that and try and get that dispersed to you all like tomorrow, if that is easier.
I have that. I'll send you my spreadsheet, and you tell me what you think about it. So at least you don't have to do it over. You can make it better. Let's put it
perfect. I mean, hey, if you already got a spreadsheet, then that's probably just the quickest. Whatever's quickest for everyone to read and more convenient. I know some people don't like to scroll or highlight. Okay, but thank you. I would appreciate seeing that. Thank you.
Okay.
Can I interject real quick and say, for a timeline, I think if the communities want to say that this is a short-term, medium-term, long-term like timeline goal, I think that might be, and you can define what short-term is, what mid-term, what long-term is. I think that might be a a better use of like determining timeline, because plans, like Imani said, like a plan isn't a guarantee of things. And so it also is a way to like say, this is our timeline, but it might not be, you know, in the city agency's timeline, or you might need, you know, part city agency, part private person or whatever. And so if you have like, you know, for us, this is a short-term goal. So we know that's a more immediate priority, and, you know, redeveloping the whole block might be a long-term goal, but the steps you need to get there may be happening in between time. I think that might be a better way to frame like the timeline piece of it. Just so one that, yeah, I'll just leave it at.
So Rennie, you're saying, so we should use short-term, medium, and long-term as our timing references, and then we'll define what that means. Like if short-term is within 1 to 2 years, medium is 3 to 5, and long-term 6+, or something like that.
Yeah. It's like, this is what the community's timeline is. And it also kind of helps you set like the priority. Like if it's a short term, that means we need to be working on this immediately. So we need to be, you know, gathering resources and advocating and all of that, you know, immediately, so we can get the short term goal met. If you wanted to do it that way.
Okay. All right.
Sorry, I realize we're running short on time, and I should have done this at the start of the meeting, but I'm gonna put my contact information in the chat for you all to email, call, text me to get in contact if you have any thoughts in the before the April meeting that you would like to communicate to me directly. Lord, I done forgot my own city phone number. That's never a good sign, is it? Uh-oh, let's pull it up. So yeah, so my email and cell phone number are now in the chat. That's for my office cell. So you might get a fast response texting rather than calling, but I'll respond to all of them as soon as I can. Emails, I try to get back to folks, even if it's not an immediate answer, try to get back to folks as quickly as I'm able. Yeah, so I appreciated hearing everyone's, even your frustrations and and the information about this evening. I did appreciate hearing all of that. And thank you all for bringing us into this and joining us and coming together over this.
Thank you, Imani.
I'd like to say one thing before, can I just say one thing? I'm sorry, before we hang up. I want to make it clear. Midway GGCA did not ever say we wanted to be excluded from the project. So I just want to make that clear. We were never asked, we were never included. And by the time everything came together and we were beginning to become involved, that's when we found out that we were excluded. So I just wanted to make that clear. And I also want to say thank you for opportunity to, to allow us to be part of, this discussion. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Sorry, I didn't mean to imply that you have been asked to be excluded. Even if that came through in my comments, I apologize. That's not at all what I meant to say.
Let me ask you quickly, Imani. So, and we could talk offline if you want to, but the walking path, so getting the information about the students who actually walk to Hartford Heights or Reach. Did you get that directly from, do you know, or maybe Rennie knows if it came from the school system? Was that provided by the school system?
It came from the school system.
Okay, so we'll be able to get it for Cecil and all that. Okay.
Yeah, so I did want to kind of clarify on that. The information just for the primary walking routes, which is the one thing that's kind of just focused on where kids are walking to and from school, that data was provided to us by the school system. And so it shows like where there's large concentrations of students going to and from Hartford. But that is the only part of Inspire that is really focused just on the kids and how they're getting to and from school. And that is just about the 21st century school. So we're not doing primary, even if there's a school nearby that kids go to, if it's not a 21st century school, we're not doing, again, just the primary walking routes there. We can, in the broader Inspire plan, discuss and have recommendations around, connections and transportation and things of that nature for other assets in a neighborhood. That's on the table. It was just the primary walking routes with data that we got from the school system that determined, those sidewalk improvements and stuff like that. But if in the broader Inspire plan, there is a need for like intersection improvements or other connection and access because there are other assets in the neighborhood, like another school or a recreation center or whatever that, kids, adults, whoever are transversing to get to that asset, then we can include those recommendations in the broader Inspire plan. So I just wanted to emphasize that, like, the broader Inspire plan is more than just about the kids. It is about the broader neighborhood and all the users in the neighborhood. It was just the primary walking routes that is specifically about the kids traveling to and from that 21st century school.
Thank you for that clarification, Rennie. Okay, so it's 7:40. The next work session where we're going through the recommendations and we'll talk offline with some of the community leadership about their thoughts and ideas about what we'd like to see included that may not already be there, so we can be prepared and have those on the table. But the next one is the 19th?
Yeah, and I'm gonna also see if I can get either Willand or Shayna to that meeting. So if there's any specific DOT projects, we can also talk about them at that table. I'll try and get that on their calendars as soon as I can.
Yes, please. Thank you. Thank you. So good night, everybody. Thank you for participating.
Good night. Thanks for having us.
All right.
Everyone have a good night.
Good
Bye.
night.
Thanks, everybody.
Good night.
Bye.